scholars from across the world gathered on the grounds of Muryangsa Temple in Pololo Valley, Oahu, to imagine a global, non-killing society. University of Hawaii political scientist Dr. Glenn D. Page, author of A Global Non-Killing Political Science, gathered guests from over 40 countries for consultation of this great idea.
Professor Radhakrishnan, and he's chairman of the Indian Council of Gandhian Studies, New Delhi. And delighted to have him here.
May I say hello to you all? I'm not here as a translator of any of the titles of Glenn, but I can claim that I've been part of 4 editions. The first in English reprint, the second Hindi edition, a Tamil edition, and the 4th, the latest, Malayalam. And I promise you, at every session I will come here to bore you with stories on each of these. At this session probably I will make a few observations on the Hindi editions, besides a couple of observations on why these efforts and why these books need to be translated into various languages. I've been a trainer of nonviolence over the last 4 decades, to be precise, and our association dates back to the 70s when Professor Page came to India to look at the Shanti Sena activities. Well, it is said that I am subject to correction. Please don't think I am making a very sweeping remark or statement, that academicians are usually skeptic about any change when somebody advocates change, while activists are pessimistic about any change. In such a climate, a new argument, a new idea, whether it is being advanced by Glenn or by anybody, tends to be looked at from this angle. More so, the peace activists at all fora, wherever Gandhian intellectuals or activists from any shade assemble, there is an atmosphere of what is called lack of confidence. The kind of confidence that one sees when people who promote war, peace, violence assemble, the kind of conviction with which they advance their argument is lacking painfully and abysmally whenever peace activists meet. They say, oh, it is not possible, how is it possible? But eves, doubts dominate and characterize much of the deliberations in most of the sessions which I have been part of or which I have been attending or even organizing, wherever these sessions be. Do we have that kind of conviction, the passionate conviction that change is the law of order and change is possible? We have never been static. If society has been static, if civilization has been static, do we think that we would have reached this level of advancement in the long history of our eternal journey from what we were several thousand years ago and where we are today? So one of the things that I will I will passionately advocate is that we should have confidence, courage, conviction that nobody will be able to prevent change, however time one might require. The changes that we do are not the result of 10 years, 100 years, or some other changes can be dated back to several thousand years of ancestry. So when Glenn talks about a need for or the reality of what is called the non-violent political science, transition from violence to orderliness, transition from brutal killing to compassionate living. Why do we entertain doubt all the time and look at it pessimistically? What I learned from my father, who was a disciple under Gandhi, and what I learned from my mentor Ramchandran, with whom I worked over 50 years, is what you call optimism, which was the essence of Gandhian vision of life. It's that optimism, Glenn Page, I see in your approach. So there is no reason why the kind of structural changes, why the kind of changes that he visualizes is impossible. No, I believe honestly that these changes will take place someday. Probably Glenn might not be there on that day to see. You and I might not be there. Hopefully, yes. Who knows? When Martin Luther King and our good friend Bernard and others marched across the Atlanta streets, asking for, protesting against segregation, everybody laughed at it and said, "What do you think it will be possible?" I am sorry. So let us have that kind of optimism in our approach, and also one of the agents that promotes peace, kind of optimism. Without optimism, there is no peace. Let us be very clear about that. It is this conviction with which rather we moved in India by with our efforts to get this book translated into the national language Hindi. India has over 1 billion people. Of this 1 billion, 70% of Indian population speaks or uses, or they use Hindi for different kind of communication. So any book translated into this national language, which is being spoken by 700 million people, will have a tremendous impact in that subcontinent, not only in the subcontinent, but in the other area. Number two, we thought this is a very revolutionary and seminal idea that should be made known to everybody, both learned or read or even unlearned. These days of communication explosion, you are able to put an idea across at all fora. So that was the second point that promoted us, that prompted us to go in for a Hindi translation. The third was, anything available in Hindi, made available in Hindi, is being made available in all the 192 member nations of the United Nations by Government of India through all the consulate generals, and there are studies and this. So this is a third. But then the problem of translating this work into Hindi was entrusted to two of my colleagues, two senior professors of Delhi University. One, Kusum Leda Chadda, she is a senior reader in the Department of Political Science in the University of Delhi. Another, a great Sanskrit and Hindi scholar, Dr. Bhatia, another senior reader of political science, not in the same department, in another department. But when they started, it was a group work. I was also a part of it. When we started the work, everybody thought it was very simple. The idea was very simple because it was available in English and the preliminary pages appeared to be very simple. But then all three of us got stuck up. Then it was Kusum Chada who told me, Dr. Radhakrishnan, it is simple, but it is deceptively simple. I am quoting her own language. It is very simple, but it is deceptively simple. Number two, the ideas, familiar ideas, but then the ideas have been presented in such a way that they could be interpreted, understood and realized at various levels. There are levels of understanding, interpretation, not 1, 2, 3. Some of the expressions and arguments have a surface level interpretation. But deeper one goes, one sees, it has another level of understanding. And again further, at the core level, many other arguments were found to have a totally different connotation, expression. So we got stuck up with translations at many points. Then we again thought that why not we consult a few others. Yes, the work we thought would be completed in 5 months took more than a year, even for the first edition. And when the first edition was presented, we again ran into some difficulty and we thought it should be redone. And finally, it was redone, everything being reprinted because there was some cultural problems, differences. Hindi being a language which has a lot of connections with regard to the syntax as well as meaning with the Pali, the old language, Pali, Sanskrit, Urdu, Arabic, all these, and again the manner in which this language is being used in modern India as the lingua franca, the official language of the nation, in a multi-ethnic, multi-lingual situation. Every word gets a different meaning or connotation a few years hence. So we want this book to go into the collective conscience of the nation. So we thought that the book, if it is to be revised, it should be revised. And now the latest edition is a revised edition, again a teamwork. The book was released at 3 places in New Delhi. At 2 of the sessions, Glenn was present, and the reviews were very warming and very reviews, though there were many political science professors who told even on the face of Glenn, this is a mad proposition and non-killing society is not going to be a reality. There is no dearth of mad professors even in political science, or there are madness is not the exclusive prerogative of any community or any segment, but then a great dream behind everything that we have achieved, there is what is called.
We have to stop at 5:15 because there's a reception at 5:30, so you got to stop at 5:15. Exactly. Yeah, you can show that.
Yeah, this is the Hindi title, Hindi book. It's available at the reception. There are extra copies also. If any would like to have a copy, it can also be purchased. So this is the Hindi edition, which now what we have done is we have 1,000 copies of the book, and 500 copies were sent as complimentary copies to all the institutional libraries, including universities in the library. And at least in 12 universities, essay and elocution competitions were held on this topic, and at least 30 to 40,000 students would have taken an examination on some test on this. Not that nobody is reading it. Lot of university students and school children are reading it, and if Glenn would permit, we will have a condensed, annotated edition for school children, so that let it reach school children. I will close with what the former Prime Minister of India, I.K. Gujral, who was to have been here, said at the launching book. He said, this book is a classic, and I wish this book is being read by every student of political science, public administration, and students of history, not only in India, everywhere. I close. Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you very much.
And I quite clearly remember the 2003, the spring when I met Glenn, because we are opposing this force to invade Iraq. And as a Buddhist, my position was very clear. We should do that. But also my other part of me knew that was going to happen. So I can almost taste, I can almost feel that still the air of the spring of 2003. And I was kind of depressed. And then Glenn gave a speech at our Buddhist center. And I went there, and then he inspired me. He really transformed me in 1 hour, 30 minutes of his talk. And that's the beginning of this Japanese translation. As many of you probably know, Japan is now trying to be a regular country, so-called regular country, so they can fight with the army and change Article 9. That kind of atmosphere in Japan now we are facing. So, without knowing those things, I tried to find somebody qualified to translate this work, which inspired my spirit. But I could not find anybody to take the task. And then Glenn encouraged me to translate myself. And I'm a biologist. I didn't know how I can do that. The only reason I did was, if I translate this book, I probably better understand what it's come from. That's a very personal, selfish reason I translate. And we arbitrarily set the date of Hiroshima Day, and then by Hiroshima Day, I'm going to finish it. So that's what happened. I think I had 2 days before Hiroshima Day, we finished the translations. So that's my experience. And my belief of possibility of non-killing world is possible is because Glenn transformed my life, so it's possible. Very personal belief, but if I can change it, anyone can change it. So that's where I come from. And I'd like to say, I really got Glenn's message yesterday. He told me, hey, I can't do it for myself anymore. So I pledge to you, no matter what happened, I will publish it. So that's my pledge to you. And then I just get into a little bit of insight, where as a quantitative reading a book without mathematical formula is very difficult. It's always looking for some kind of mathematical formula. And I found one. I thought I found one. And page 149. S raised to the fourth power times LCIR equals non-killing global transformation. So I wrote an email to the Glenn immediately. Hey, if you raise the power if one of those factors becomes zero, everything becomes zero, so this must be wrong. So I proposed, I knew Glenn told me this is just a figure thing, it's not real mathematical model. But his big point is, two big messages. One is the ask the right question. And second one is, hey, you can count the killing. So I also like to count our success. So I propose a changing, and that is my third page thing, is a simple additive form of non-killing transformation index. And I hope I can do something on this, and then I can try to see where the United States can be. That'll be quite interesting. And also, I'm mathematically oriented. I really want to see killing index, how we doing every year with 198 or 200 countries. We count one by one how many people are killed. And now, murders and suicide, we decide and then get the report, and then I try to see, publish every year how we do it. That's the my suggestion to the next step. But so I'm hoping Japanese people, many Japanese people read this book and sit down and really think about what they're trying to do. What you mean by regular country? The past 6 years, we were fortunate to not involved anymore, and then we enjoy prosperity with other people's sacrifice. So now is the time, I think, as a Japanese, to stand up, to send a message of split of a nice article to the war. And I hope this Japanese translation and published with many people to recognize the special mission that Japanese have. That's it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
One of the impressions I have from the presentations is that the non-killing spirit has been motivation for the translation of non-killing global political science to different languages of it. The non-killing spirit has been a factor explaining the determination of translators who have had different experiences in terms of the difficulties that they faced in trying to translate the book. I also noticed from the presentations that all the presenters or translators have a common cultural problem. Language is a factor in the transmission of culture from one generation to the other. And being an important factor, I noticed that translators have a common problem of trying to find appropriate words in the different languages for non-killing. Indeed, for me, when I came in contact with Blaine's book, one of the problems I had was to locate the meaning of non-killing. And I picked my dictionaries and began to look for that word, non-killing, and I couldn't find it. And I think translators have had some problem. And it is strange, because I'm sure that Professor Blaine would have had to wait a little longer to come out with his book if he had had to be looking for an appropriate word. I'm sure that he did not get that word non-killing from the dictionary or anywhere. And so it is a challenge that I see that the translators have been able to overcome, surmount, by working hard to be able to find appropriate words that will capture the ideas and the title of the global, non-killing global political science. I also noticed that the non-spirit which motivated translators also had at the background the idea of allowing political science to play a more social role. And I discovered that the majority of the translators have background in political science. And so this is also a challenge for more translators who are likely to emerge. I also noticed that population of language groups has been a factor in the choice of language in which the book should be translated to. I noticed carefully that the Portuguese language is widely spoken in the world. And the choice of the translator translate the book to the Portuguese language was actually influenced by the population of people that speak the Portuguese language. Now here, for us in Nigeria, I'm not going to talk about that now, later. I also noticed, I also observed distribution is a major area of concentration in the translation of the book. From the suggestions that I got from one of the presenters, there's need to expand the distribution network. And I think that has not been properly explored and exploited by many of the translators. I think that's all I can say.
Now I'm going to request the presenters one by one to present their papers. First of all, I will request Dr. Yoon-Jae Chung, Director, Syndrome Institute of Statecraft and Leadership, Korea, to present his presentation, please.
Thank you. Morning has broken, just like the first one. It's a very beautiful morning we have this morning. and I feel very honored to be with you, forerunners and pioneers and practitioners of nonviolence. Also, I am very happy to speak with you about the future of nonviolent and peaceful world. I am very happy. I did my old teacher, Glenn, and his wife, Glenn, for inviting me to this historic event. While translating this book into Korean, it was difficulty anyhow. More than a difficulty, it was a hardship for me. In this age, as you know well, we are so busy, so many businesses to teach, to supervise the doctoral student, give them special lectures, and also as a leader of the environmental group in Korea, I also have engaged in anti-wind turbine campaigns and for the peaceful utilize BMD in Korea. Maybe in some way, even though I didn't talk about this to my old teacher precisely, I have been engaged in this kind of environmental movement with my colleagues from my school days. Still, as the president of the Korea Green Club, I have been just fighting against anti-wind turbine in our country. Also, I'm going to try to organize a conference, global or national, about the future of BMG, demilitarized zone in the Korean Peninsula, as one non-violent scheme for security for two post-conflict. I think while translating this book, the chapter 2 was most difficult part to translate. But yes, we can experience some cultural shock or cultural difference while translating this. But I do not say like that, because this is a theoretical work. If you agree with this theory, it's not difficult to go through. So, at last, I finished the translation, and my friend publisher published it just one day before I left for Hawaii. So I could dedicate this book to my teacher, Glenn. And while translating, one of the prestigious newspapers in Korea, Chung recommended Glenn Page as one of pioneers for the 21st century with his idea of nonviolence. So he asked me to have dialogue with him in person. So I could fly to Hawaii last year to see. So I do not really want to read my essay, but I feel inevitable to read some lines from my essay. Read some lines when you allow me. So let me read some lines from my essay. It shows who Glenn is and what a nonviolent as a political theory. When I was a student, I also take his course, Nonviolent Alternative. He seriously criticized the past conventional political theories by Machiavelli, John Locke, and Max Weber and Karl Marx. And he introduced his new concept of nonviolence. And also, I was very impressed when after the class, he brought us to outside the class and pick up the waste and litter as a practice of non-violence. But 24 years ago, after meeting him last year, asked my old teacher one question regarding the current issue facing South Korea. Right now in Korea, the conservative and progressive camp are having a heated debate over the issue of whether to dismantle the statue of General MacArthur in Incheon. What do you think? MacArthur is an American hero during the Korean War. He listened to radio news whenever he drives his car, a Korean-made Kia. Also, he was aware of this issue. He answered like this. Yes, of course, all soldiers are killers by profession. But does that mean that we should tear apart all war monuments? No, it is better to keep them as monuments to remind humanity that we have failed in non-killing. Instead of destroying them, why not erect beside them statues of heroes and heroines who opposed killing? General MacArthur was a model soldier. He commanded the Incheon landing operation successfully during the Korean War and wanted to go ahead and invade mainland China. But a few years later, in 1955, he became a very peaceful and spoke out against war, saying, "The next great advance of civilization cannot take place until war is abolished." We must have new thought, new ideas, new concept. We must break out from the straitjacket of the past. You can engrave this speech on his statue as a lesson about learning from the violence of the past. I think that should be more important. Is that?
Is a non-killing society possible? And we're going to look at the different places. And we're going to begin again with the Philippines, and I call on our friend, Dr. Pepe Jose Abueva.
This is the book that records the inquiries, the individual responses of 16 different Filipino scholars and some leaders in government to the question, is a non-killing society possible in the Philippines? If yes, how? If not, why not? And I can tell you that among us, we're mostly academics, university-based, but two of us are priests, academic priests, Society of Jesus. 3 or 4 of us were working with the government. One of them was the presidential advisor on the peace process. 2 are leaders of peace NGOs. One is the leader of a particular NGO which says a gunless society. He's the advocate of a gunless society. And he has founded a political party, Kapatiran, which means brotherhood or sisterhood. And they offered the candidates for the senatorial elections last last May. They were at the tail end of the list of candidates, the official results of the election. But they had a following in the urban areas. One was a member of Congress, a woman member of Congress. One was a former ambassador to the Holy See. He's a very active leader, civil society. Another was our foremost sociologist. He's also a very popular columnist in the Philippine Daily Inquirer. So, in general, I would say that we agreed that a non-killing Filipino society is possible, but about 3 of us said that is not the question. It's not whether a non-killing society is possible. It is whether we want it, whether our leaders want it. Because if our leaders want it, we'll move in that direction. The most critical of all was his former ambassador to the Holy See, who has spent his time also as a member of the peace panel in negotiating with the communist rebels. He happens to be the brother-in-law of President Corazon Aquino, a very serious, a very devout civil society leader. And although because of his participation in the peace talks, he was convinced that maybe the leaders were not serious about these talks. They were engaged in the talks because it was expected that it was indefensible not to have talks. But there is also the basic understanding that the leader of the Communist Party believes to be himself the successor of Mao Zedong in the Maoist communist movement. And there is no way that he would give up this role of successor of Mao Zedong. This was a small country leader, communist movement, having that self-image. So leaders really, what the leaders think matters so much. So it may be true that they're just talking for the sake of talking, because it's expected to be talking, but neither side really wants to agree. I already mentioned that Ambassador Howard D. made a qualification about a non-killing society. Although I am impressed by this qualification and refinement or extension of the concept, I am bothered by the fact that it seems to be a counsel of perfection. But that is his contribution, and that's the reason why we had this conference. And a non-killing society to be one is to be one that has successfully rid itself of the need for coercion. A non-killing society, for us to emulate and aspire to attain, must be a benevolent, life-sustaining society in all aspects of life, in all human activity, and in all human relationships, internally, amongst our own people, and externally in dealing with the peoples of the world. And he ends up with that question, she said, is really the relevant question. And the question to him is whether our leaders really want that, or whether they don't. And to him, of course, they don't. Now, our sociologist friends say something almost to that same effect. But he's positive, he's accepting. A non-killing society is possible in a future that we desire. So if we desire that future, just like Howard David said, then we will do it. A non-killing society, to him, is one that has successfully rid itself of the need for coercion and violence in the quest for freedom and order. A society that has managed to substitute rational negotiation and normative commitment for coercion as the basis for compliance and cooperation with citizens. It's a very important substitution there. Professor Magadia, who is a priest, says that we must, in order to have a non-killing society, overcome our basic problems, reform our institutions, and reconfigure our personal values in building a non-killing society. The executive director of a Peace Institute said, this is, of course, a very different kind of question. Usually the peace movement speaks of a just peace, ending the war and armed hostilities, and addressing the roots of conflict, but really evading that issue. It should be not killing for any reason, for any justification. Others are fully, without qualification, accepting the idea of the possibility of a non-killing society. A political scientist says that faith and science and the global peace movement should converge on the imperative of universal peace, and this will support our pursuit of a non-killing society. Now this is very important, the idea that we should really merge. There should be a convergence of faith, of religion and faith on the one hand, and science and learning, empirical learning on the other. The leader of the presidential advisor on the peace process is very affirmative. The possibility of a non-killing society is thoroughly convincing and extremely practical, according to them. A writer, Dennis Arroyo, says, yes, we want to move in that direction, and there are a wide range of non-lethal weapons that are available if we must use force. Our statesman, Dr. Jovito Salonga, a retired Senate President, who has just gotten an award from the Magsaysay Foundation for government service, continuing to be an activist in his 80s, expresses his hope for building a non-violent and non-killing society in our violent society and world. He laments the fact that the lone superpower is the one that most needs to believe in and become a non-killing society. Our Muslim colleague, whose name is Dr. Makapado Muslim, peace scholar, a student of Glenn Page, chancellor of one of our universities in Mindanao, underlines the need for a multiculturalist governance in moving towards a non-killing society, starting in Mindanao, where we have the concentration of our Moro Muslim brothers and sisters. Father Alejo, another SJ, apologist and reform activist, restates the question, and he's one of the three who are quite skeptical. The question should be, but he didn't say that, he said, I'll pose the question, is a non-killing society imaginable? Subtitle, celebrating the question. He seems to say that a non-killing society is imaginable, but maybe not possible in our time. Howard D. Ambassador concludes, at the end of the day, the question is not whether a non-killing society is possible for us or not. The question is, do we have the desire and the will to make it happen? And how long shall we wait to muster the courage, the task, even if all odds appear to be against us, and when all evil forces are conspiring against us? My own view, of course, reflecting on the views of my colleagues, is that for us to succeed, Filipinos to succeed, in building a non-killing society, we must stress the quest for peace and development and the building of an authentic democracy towards an emerging Filipino vision of the good society. These urges and compulsions should go hand in hand. All aspects of our vision, therefore, plus the specific ideal and goal of non-killing, developed and pursued as an interactive and interdependent whole. Only in this way can a non-killing Filipino society be approximated and made sustainable. A developing non-killing society in the Philippines and an increasingly non-killing global society would, of course, be mutually reinforcing. But we are encouraged when we say that the obstacles are formidable, so formidable as to be paralyzing. We are reminded by quotes that Glenn Page made from two great Indian leaders. According to Nehru, the question that the country puts are a measure of that country's political development. Often the failure of that country is due to the fact that it has not put the right question to itself. We put this question to ourselves in the Philippines. And another hopeful quote from the great Gandhi. We are daily witnessing the phenomenon of the impossible of yesterday becoming the possible of today. To reiterate, therefore, most of us co-authors of this book believe a non-killing society is a defining aspect of the emerging Filipino vision and goal of our good society. And this is possible. Problematic, yes, but certainly not unthinkable. So is a non-killing global society in the long perspective. I hope not too long. Sooner, if the vision and goal can inform and propel the determined efforts around the world of more and more leaders, more and more political leaders. Conscious of our human limitations, we cannot overemphasize the need for faith and spirituality, even in our mundane endeavors as a nation. How much more in trying to solve our most difficult problems and achieve our noblest human aspirations. Beyond human reason, will and struggle, we believe in God's will and power, for to Him nothing is impossible.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abueva.